Bullies torment the new kid until his secret fighting skills leave them speechless. Eli Clark kept his eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor as he navigated the crowded hallway of Westlake High School. At 15, he was shorter than most boys his age, with a softness around his middle that made his uniform hang awkwardly on his frame. His rounded shoulders and downcast eyes practically screamed target to anyone looking for one. It was his third week at Westlake, and already he'd mapped out the quickest routes between classes, the least populated bathrooms, and the safest corners of the cafeteria. Not that it helped much. They always found him anyway. "Hey, Clark!" The booming voice of Jackson Pierce cut through the hallway chatter like a knife. "Got my homework done yet?" Eli quickened his pace, pretending not to hear. Jackson was a junior, the undisputed king of Westlake's social hierarchy. At 6'1" with broad shoulders and a varsity jacket, he looked like he'd been engineered in a lab specifically to torment kids like Eli. A strong hand clamped down on Eli's shoulder, spinning him around. "I'm talking to you, new kid." Eli's pulse quickened, but his face remained impassive. "I don't have it," he said quietly. Jackson's two shadows materialized beside him. Damon Reeves, tall and wiry with a permanent smirk, and Tyler Walsh, stocky and mean-eyed. The terrible trio, as the rest of the school called them. "That's not what we agreed on," Jackson said, shoving Eli against the lockers. The metal handle dug painfully into Eli's back, but he didn't flinch. "I said you do my chem homework, and maybe, just maybe, we let you eat lunch in peace today." Peace. Around them, students slowed to watch, their expressions a mix of morbid curiosity and relief that they weren't the ones being targeted. No teachers in sight, as usual. At Westlake, the faculty had an uncanny ability to disappear whenever Jackson and his friends decided to have fun. "I didn't agree to anything," Eli said, his voice soft but steady. Jackson's eyes narrowed. "You getting brave, Clark?" He pressed his forearm against Eli's chest, pinning him harder against the lockers. "Because that would be a really stupid move. Stay calm, don't react, it's not worth it." The familiar mantra echoed in Eli's mind as he drew a deep breath. "Just leave me alone," Eli said, his gaze still fixed on the floor. Jackson laughed, looking to his friends for approval. "Leave you alone. You hear that, guys? The little pudge wants us to leave him alone." He leaned in closer, his breath hot on Eli's face. "You don't give the orders around here. I do." With a quick motion, Jackson grabbed Eli's backpack and upended it, scattering books, papers, and pens across the hallway floor. Students stepped over and on Eli's belongings as they passed, some laughing, others just hurrying by with averted eyes. "Oops," Jackson said with mock concern. "Better pick that up before the bell rings. You wouldn't want to be late to class." He deliberately stepped on Eli's calculator as he walked away, the plastic cracking under his weight. "See you at lunch, Clark. Don't forget, I like my fries with extra ketchup." As the trio sauntered off, their laughter echoing in the hallway, Eli knelt to gather his scattered belongings. His hands were steady, his breathing controlled. No one watching would have guessed that beneath his baggy clothes, lean muscle rippled with each movement, the result of 8 years of intensive Muay Thai training. No one would have known that Eli Clark, the new kid everyone pitied or ignored, had been the junior regional champion back in his hometown before his family moved. As he collected his last notebook, a girl with a messy bun and kind eyes knelt beside him, handing him a pencil. "Sorry about them," she said. "They're the worst." "It's fine," Eli said automatically. "I'm Maya, by the way." "Eli." "I know," she said with a small smile. "The whole school's talking about how Jackson's claimed you as his new project." She hesitated. "You should probably just do his homework. It's easier that way." Eli shrugged. "I'll handle it." Maya looked skeptical but didn't argue. "Well, good luck, you'll need it." As she walked away, Eli slipped his cracked calculator into his backpack. 3 weeks. That's how long he'd promised his mother he would try things her way. No fighting, no trouble, just keeping his head down and focusing on school. 2 more days and that promise expired. 2 more days, and Jackson Pierce was going to learn exactly what kind of project he'd taken on. The cafeteria at Westlake High was a carefully stratified ecosystem. The athletes and popular kids claimed the center tables, while various social groups radiated outward in descending order of status. Eli had found a spot in the far corner, a small table partially hidden behind a pillar where he could eat quickly and leave before Jackson and his friends usually arrived. Today, he wasn't fast enough. "There he is," Tyler's voice rang out just as Eli was finishing his sandwich, "our little homework helper." Eli continued eating, not looking up even as 3 shadows fell across his table. "I'm talking to you, Clark," Jackson said, slamming his hand on the table hard enough to make Eli's water bottle topple over. The water spilled across the table, soaking into Eli's notebook. "I heard you," Eli said, calmly rescuing his notebook and shaking the water off. "Then why aren't you answering?" Damon asked, sliding onto the bench opposite Eli. "You deaf as well as dumb." A small crowd was gathering now. Lunchtime entertainment was a Westlake tradition, especially when it involved the terrible trio. "I'm neither," Eli said, finally looking up to meet Jackson's gaze. Something in his steady brown eyes made Jackson blink, but the moment of uncertainty quickly passed. "Where's my homework, Clark?" Jackson demanded. "I told you, I'm not doing it." The cafeteria had grown quieter, the ambient chatter dying down. As more students tuned into the confrontation. "Wrong answer," Jackson said, grabbing Eli's tray and shoving it off the table. It clattered to the floor, the remaining half of Eli's sandwich and his apple rolling into the puddle from his spilled water. Eli didn't move. He didn't even look at his ruined lunch. He kept his eyes fixed on Jackson's, his expression unnervingly calm. "You've got a staring problem, Clark." Jackson grabbed Eli by the collar, hauling him to his feet. "Maybe I need to give you something else to look at." Eli could feel the coiled strength in his own body, the instinct to counter, to strike. His muscles tensed automatically, muscle memory from countless hours of training ready to take over, but he held back. 2 more days, he reminded himself. "I don't want trouble," Eli said quietly. Jackson laughed. "Should have thought of that. Before you decided to be stubborn." He shoved Eli back down onto the bench. "Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow you're bringing my homework. Chemistry, English, and history. You're also bringing me lunch and $20 for my trouble. Or what?" The words slipped out before Eli could stop them. Jackson's eyes widened in surprise before narrowing dangerously. "Or what? Are you serious right now?" He looked around at the gathered crowd, playing to his audience. "Clark wants to know, or what?" He turned back to Eli, leaning in close. "Or we'll find you after school, drag you behind the gym, and teach you what happens to stubborn little punching bags who don't know their place." Eli's face betrayed nothing, but inside a decision was made. He wouldn't be waiting 2 more days after all. "Fine," he said simply. Jackson seemed almost disappointed by the quick capitulation. "Smart choice for once." He gestured to his friends. "Let's go. This loser's boring me." As they walked away, Damon deliberately kicked Eli's fallen tray, sending it skidding across the floor. The crowd slowly dispersed, the show apparently over for now. Maya appeared at his side with a napkin, helping him clean up the mess. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Eli said, accepting the napkin with a nod of thanks. "You shouldn't have pushed back like that," she said, concern in her voice. "They're going to be watching for you now." "Good," Eli said, so quietly she wasn't sure she heard him correctly. "What?" "Nothing," he said, gathering his things. "Thanks for the help." As he walked out of the cafeteria, Eli felt lighter than he had in weeks. The decision was made. Tomorrow, after school, behind the gym. It would end there. The rest of the UI sub-day passed in a blur. Eli sat through his classes, took notes, answered questions when called upon, but his mind was elsewhere. He was planning, preparing mentally for what would come tomorrow. After the final bell, he hurried home, taking a different route than usual in case Jackson and his friends decided to make good on their threat early. His mother wouldn't be home until late. She'd taken on extra shifts at the hospital since they moved, so he had the apartment to himself. In his room, Eli pushed aside his furniture and rolled out the exercise mat he kept hidden under his bed. For the next 2 hours, he moved through familiar forms, his body flowing from one position to the next with a grace that would have shocked his classmates. Each punch, each kick, each block was executed with precision, honed by years of training. The time he finished, sweat soaked his t-shirt and his breathing was heavy but controlled. He felt centered, ready. Tomorrow would change everything, but tonight he needed to prepare, not just physically, but mentally. Eli took a long shower, letting the hot water soothe his muscles. He ate a protein-heavy dinner, did his homework, and went to bed early. As he lay in the darkness, he visualized what might happen, running through scenarios and responses. He wasn't looking for a fight. He never had been. But he was done running, done hiding who he was and what he could do. If Jackson and his friends wanted a target, they'd chosen the wrong one. The next day at school, Eli moved through the hallways with a subtle but noticeable difference. His shoulders were no longer hunched, his gaze no longer fixed on the floor. He walked with quiet confidence, his movements fluid and purposeful. A few students did double takes as he passed. Something was different about the new kid, but they couldn't quite put their finger on what. The morning passed without incident. Jackson and his friends usually didn't bother with their targets until lunchtime, preferring to have an audience. When the lunch bell rang, Eli made his way to the cafeteria with measured steps. He chose a table in plain sight this time, not his usual hidden corner. It didn't take long for the terrible trio to spot him. "Well, look who's decided to be brave today," Jackson announced as they approached, drawing the attention of nearby tables, sitting out in the open like a real boy. Eli continued eating his lunch calmly, not acknowledging them until they were standing right at his table. "Where's my stuff, Clark?" Jackson demanded. Eli finally looked up. "I don't have it." A dangerous smile spread across Jackson's face. "Wrong answer. Again." He turned to his friends. "Looks like Clark here needs that lesson after all. Behind the gym after school," Damon added, loud enough for nearby students to hear. "Spread the word." Tyler leaned in, his voice lowered to a menacing whisper. "You should have just done what you were told, Clark. Now you're going to get hurt." Eli met his gaze steadily. "We'll see." Something in his calm confidence made Tyler falter for a moment, but Jackson didn't notice, already turning away with a dismissive laugh. "See you after school, loser," he called over his shoulder. "Bring bandages." As they left, the cafeteria buzzed with excited whispers. The new kid was getting beaten up. After school, prime entertainment in the dull routine of Westlake High, Maya slid into the seat across from Eli, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you insane? Why would you provoke them like that?" Eli shrugged. "I didn't. They provoked me. That doesn't matter. They're going to hurt you, Eli, 3 against 1. I'll be fine." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "You can't seriously be planning to show up. If I don't, they'll just find me tomorrow, or the next day." Eli met her worried gaze. "It has to end somewhere. By getting beaten up behind the high gym? That's your solution?" Eli almost smiled. "Just watch what happens, okay?" Something in his voice gave her pause. "What are you planning?" But Eli just returned to his lunch, leaving her question hanging in the air. By 6th period, word had spread throughout the school. Students whispered about it in hallways and passed notes in class. The new kid, the quiet, chubby one who kept to himself, was about to get destroyed by Jackson Pierce and his friends behind the gym after school. Even a few teachers seemed to have caught wind of the rumor. Mr. Bennett, Eli's history teacher, kept him after class for a brief moment. "Everything okay, Eli?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "Yes, sir," Eli replied politely. "You know, if anyone is giving you trouble, you can always talk to me or another teacher." Eli nodded. "I appreciate that, Mr. Bennett, but everything's fine." The teacher looked unconvinced but didn't press further. "All right then. Just remember there are better ways to handle problems than some of the options teenagers tend to choose." "I understand," Eli said. "Thank you." As he left the classroom, Eli knew Mr. Bennett wouldn't do anything. None of the teachers would. They'd heard the rumors, but they'd convinced themselves. It was just teenage drama, just talk. By the time anyone thought to check behind the gym, it would all be over. The final bell rang, and students poured out of classrooms into the hallways. Instead of the usual rush for the exits, though, there was a noticeable flow of students heading toward the back of the school, where the gym stood separate from the main building. Eli took his time at his locker, methodically packing his backpack with the books he'd need for homework. He removed his watch and placed it carefully in the locker. Then, with deliberate movements, he changed from his school shoes into the cross-trainers he'd brought for gym class. Maya appeared beside him, her face pinched with worry. "Please don't go, Eli. Just walk out the front door and go home. They might be mad tomorrow, but at least you won't be in the hospital." Eli zipped his backpack and closed his locker. "I have to go, Maya." "No, you don't. This isn't some movie where the underdog has to stand up to the bully. This is real life, and in real life, 3 guys beating up 1 guy ends with someone getting seriously hurt." "You're right," Eli said calmly. "It's not a movie." He shouldered his backpack. "Are you coming?" Maya stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to come watch you get beaten up?" "I want you to come watch what happens," he corrected her. "It's your choice, though." With that, he turned and walked toward the back exit, leaving Maya torn between concern for his safety and curiosity about his inexplicable confidence. In the end, curiosity won. She hurried after him, falling into step beside him as he pushed through the exit doors and headed toward the gym. A sizable crowd had already gathered in the open space behind the gym building. Students formed a loose circle, chatting excitedly, their energy similar to that before a pep rally. In the center of the circle stood Jackson, Damon, and Tyler, looking smug and dangerous in their varsity jackets. A hush fell over the crowd as Eli approached, students stepping aside to let him through. Maya hung back at the edge of the circle, her arms wrapped around herself as if for protection. "Well, look who actually showed up," Jackson called out, his voice carrying across the open space. I thought you might be smart enough to run home. To mommy. Eli stopped a few paces away from them, setting his backpack carefully on the ground. Without his usual hunched posture, the crowd could see that while he was still shorter than average, he wasn't as soft as his baggy clothes had made him appear. Last chance, Clark, Jackson said, cracking his knuckles theatrically. Apologize for disrespecting me. Promise to do my homework for the rest of the semester, and maybe we'll only rough you up a little. The crowd murmured, eager for the action to start. Eli's voice was calm and clear when he finally spoke. No, Jackson's eyebrows shot up. No? That's all you've got to say? I'm not doing your homework. I'm not apologizing. And after today, you're going to leave me alone. Eli's words weren't loud, but they carried a quiet authority that sent a ripple of surprise through the onlookers. Damon and Tyler exchanged glances, a flicker of uncertainty crossing their faces. This wasn't how victims were supposed to act, but Jackson just laughed. Big talk from a little man. Let's see if you're still this brave when I'm done with you. He stepped forward, fists clenched. Hold my jacket, Damon. I don't want to get loser blood on it. He shrugged off his varsity jacket, tossing it to his friend before advancing on Eli. This is gonna hurt you a lot more than it hurts me, he sneered, raising his fist. The punch Jackson threw was telegraphed from a mile away. A wide, looping right hook meant more for show than effectiveness. To everyone's shock, Eli simply wasn't there when it landed. He had shifted slightly to the side, the punch missing him by inches. Jackson blinked in surprise, then snarled and threw another punch, harder this time. Again, Eli moved just enough to avoid it, his movements fluid and economical. Stop dancing and fight back, you coward, Jackson shouted, frustration bleeding into his voice as he launched a series of increasingly wild punches. Eli avoided each one, his expression calm, almost detached, as if he were merely participating in a practice drill rather than a real fight. The crowd grew quieter, confusion replacing excitement as the expected beatdown failed to materialize. I don't want to hurt you, Eli said quietly during a brief pause in Jackson's assault. Just walk away now. Something in his tone, not threatening, but absolutely certain, made Jackson hesitate, but then he remembered his audience, remembered his reputation. Shut up, he growled, lunging forward with his full weight behind a punch aimed straight at Eli's face. In one fluid motion, Eli sidestepped, caught Jackson's extended arm and used the larger boy's momentum against him. Before anyone quite registered what had happened, Jackson was on the ground, flipped over Eli's hip in a perfect throw. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Jackson lay on his back, momentarily stunned by the impact and the incomprehensible fact that he was looking up at the sky. What the hell? Damon muttered, Jackson's jacket still clutched in his hands. Eli stepped back, giving Jackson space to get up. We're done here, he said simply. But Jackson wasn't ready to accept defeat. Scrambling to his feet, his face flushed with humiliation and rage, he charged at Eli like a bull. I'm gonna kill you. This time, Eli didn't just evade. As Jackson reached him, Eli moved in a blur of perfectly executed Muay Thai, a series of strikes too fast for most watchers to follow, connected with precision, a front kick to create distance, a quick jab to disrupt Jackson's balance, and finally a round kick that connected with Jackson's thigh with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a side of beef. Jackson went down hard, clutching his leg, his face contorted in pain and shock. The crowd was dead silent now, students staring wide-eyed at the scene unfolding before them. This wasn't how these things were supposed to go. The new kid, the target, the nobody, he wasn't supposed to be able to do whatever this was. Your turn? Eli asked calmly, turning to Damon and Tyler. The two exchanged glances, uncertainty clear on their faces. Jackson was still on the ground groaning. What the hell are you? Tyler demanded. Just a kid who's tired of being bullied, Eli replied. Are we done here? For a moment it seemed like Tyler might rush him anyway, but Damon grabbed his arm, shaking his head slightly. Not worth it, man, he muttered. Then louder, this isn't over, Clark. Yes, it is, Eli said, his voice firm. It's over right now. You leave me alone, I leave you alone. That's the deal. He looked around the circle of watching students, meeting their stunned gazes one by one. That goes for everyone. I don't want trouble. I just want to be left in peace. With that, he picked up his backpack, turned, and walked calmly through the parting crowd. Behind him, he could hear Jackson cursing, Damon and Tyler arguing in hushed voices, and the increasing volume of excited chatter as students processed what they'd just witnessed. By tomorrow, the story would be all over school, embellished and exaggerated into legend. Eli didn't care. He'd done what was necessary. No more, no less. He hadn't hurt Jackson permanently. The kick would leave an impressive bruise, but no lasting damage. He hadn't humiliated him beyond what was needed to make his point. Most importantly, he hadn't lost control. Maya caught up to him as he rounded the corner of the main building. "Oh my God," she breathed, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, Eli, what was that? Where did you learn to—" "I've been training since I was 7, he said simply. "Muay Thai mostly, some jiu-jitsu. But you never said anything. You let them push you around for weeks." Eli shrugged. "My mom made me promise to try things her way first. No fighting, no trouble, just focusing on school and trying to fit in. But why? If you could do that, why would she want you to hide it?" "We moved here to get away from trouble," Eli said, his pace steady as they walked toward the front of the school. "At my old school, I got a reputation for fighting. Not because I started anything, but because I finished it. Mum thought we could have a fresh start here if I just kept my head down." Maya was silent for a moment, processing this. "So what changed? Why today?" "The promise was for 3 weeks, Eli said. "After that, if things weren't better, I could handle it my way." "That's not what I expected," Maya admitted. Eli smiled slightly. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. That you'd just snapped? That you'd secretly been taking self-defense classes after the bullying started?" She shook her head. "Not that you've been some kind of martial arts prodigy this whole time, just pretending to be an easy target." "I wasn't pretending," Eli said. "I was trying a different approach. It just didn't work." They reached the front of the school, where students were still trickling out to waiting buses and cars. "What happens now?" Maya asked. Eli adjusted his backpack strap. "Now I go home, do my homework, have dinner with my mom, and come back to school tomorrow." "No, I mean with Jackson and everyone else. What happens now that they know?" Eli considered this. "Some will leave me alone. Some will want to be friends because they think it's cool or because they want protection. Some might even try to challenge me to prove themselves." He shrugged. "It doesn't matter, I'll handle whatever comes." Maya studied him for a moment. "You know, for someone who just took down the biggest bully in school without breaking a sweat, you're remarkably chill about the whole thing." That drew a genuine smile from Eli. "My Sifu, my teacher, always said that true martial arts isn't about fighting. It's about finding balance, being centered enough that you can't be easily moved, either physically or emotionally." "That's actually pretty deep," Maya said, looking impressed. "He also said that anyone who picks a fight is an idiot, but sometimes idiots need to be educated." Maya laughed. "I think I'd like your Sifu." "Yeah," Eli said, his smile turning slightly wistful. "He's one of the things I miss most about home." They reached the point where their paths diverged, Maya to the bus loop, Eli to the sidewalk that would take him home. "See you tomorrow?" Maya asked, and there was a new note in her voice, something between curiosity and admiration. "Yeah," Eli said. "See you tomorrow." The story of what happened behind the gym spread through Westlake High like wildfire. By the next morning, the tale had grown to mythic proportions. According to some versions, Eli had knocked out all 3 bullies with a single spinning kick. Others claimed he'd been training with secret government agents. The quieter, shyer students whispered that he might be willing to teach them some moves. Jackson didn't come to school that day. Damon and Tyler showed up, but kept their distance from Eli, eyeing him warily whenever their paths crossed in the hallway. As Eli had predicted, the social dynamics shifted dramatically. Students who had never spoken to him before suddenly found reasons to approach him. Some were clearly looking to attach themselves to his newfound notoriety, while others seemed genuinely interested in getting to know the real Eli, now that he wasn't hiding in the shadows. There were a few challenges, too, mostly from guys who fancied themselves tough and wanted to prove something. Eli declined each one politely but firmly. "I don't fight for entertainment," he told a junior who cornered him after gym class. What happened with Jackson wasn't a show, it was self-defense. By the end of the week, a new equilibrium had established itself. Eli was no longer invisible, no longer the easy target, but he hadn't ascended to Jackson's former position of feared ruler either. Instead, he occupied a unique space, respected, a little mysterious, but fundamentally left alone, which was all he'd wanted in the first place. Jackson finally returned to school the following Monday, sporting a spectacular bruise on his thigh and a noticeably subdued demeanor. The talk was that his parents had been called in for a meeting with the principal after the fight. Apparently, several students had reported his bullying over the past months, but it had taken Eli's stand to finally force the administration to take action. The 2 boys encountered each other in the hallway between classes. The crowd around them grew quiet, watching with bated breath to see what would happen. Jackson stopped a few feet away from Eli, his gaze wary but no longer hostile. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Jackson gave a slight nod, not friendly but acknowledging. Clark. Eli returned the nod. Pierce. That was it. No apology, no threats, no dramatic reconciliation, just a simple recognition that the dynamics had changed and both understood the new rules. As Jackson limped away, Maya appeared at Eli's side. Well, that was anticlimactic, she observed. Eli shrugged. It doesn't need to be more than that. I guess not. Maya fell into step beside him as they headed to their next class. You know, the way you handled everything. It's pretty impressive. Fighting isn't impressive, Eli said. Anyone can learn to throw a punch. I don't mean the fighting, Maya clarified. I mean the way you stayed true to yourself through all of it. You didn't become what you were fighting against. Eli considered this. My Sifu always said that the true test isn't whether you can win a fight. It's whether you know when not to fight at all. Your Sifu sounds wise, Maya said with a smile. He is. Eli hesitated, then added, I'm going to his dojo this weekend. He opened a new branch here, which is part of why we moved to this town. You could come if you wanted. Try a class. Maya's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Me, I'm not exactly fighter material. Neither was I when I started, Eli said. It's not about being a fighter. It's about finding your center, like I said before, being strong enough inside that nothing can easily move you. The bell rang, signaling the start of class. I'll think about it, Maya promised as they reached her classroom door. Eli nodded. That's all anyone can ask. As he continued down the hallway to his own class, Eli reflected on the past few weeks. The move, the bullying, the decision to finally stand up for himself, it had all led to this moment where he could finally be himself, completely and without apology. He was neither the invisible new kid nor the fearsome fighter of recent legend. He was just Eli Clark, a boy who had found his balance in a new place, someone who knew his own strength and the responsibility that came with it. And for the first time since arriving at Westlake High, he felt like he belonged. Well, now I want to know, what's your opinion about this story? Leave a comment, we'd love to hear from you. And tell us which city you watched this video from. And it's not over yet. There's another powerful story playing on your screen right now. Click on it. I'm waiting for you.